where we are going to be unpacking the same day one of the nominations with Charity Ahimbisimbwe, the executive director of the Citizens Coalition for Electoral Democracy in Uganda. That shall not be the only focal point for this conversation. We shall also unpack the raid on the NUP offices, where the security authorities were looking for military regalia that they did say that they found at the premises of the National Unity Platform offices. But then, as it is, we shall also unpack other issues like the violence that took center stage during the NRM primaries, and will it be replicated on the national stage? Charity shall be telling us, and what measures can we put in place to ensure that we avoid such a callous development. Charity is here with me. Very good morning.
Good morning, Romeo.
All right,
good morning.
It's really, really great to see you. And let's unpack first the police raid on the NUP offices. What do you make of it?
Now, already the NUP issue is in the court of public opinion.
Yes.
So what should happen, Romeo, is that there should be dialogue on the side of NUP and the police. And this dialogue should be initiated by the Electoral Commission. Why should there be dialogue? Because there's a lot of detail the two people know that the public does not know. But the public has taken center stage because they want a report, a form of report from the police. The police should tell them, why did we move in? What were we looking for? Did we find it or we didn't find it? Now, NUP on the other side is saying you took our signatures and we are going for nomination. It's not fair on that front. But we saw the police trying to be very professional, and we also saw them with such warrants. They presented them. Now, that means they prepared to go and siege this office. Going forward, instead of having more tension, because electoral processes are tense
yes.
in their very nature, what should happen right now is dialogue, that the young people who believe in the ideals of NUP will not feel threatened or intimidated, but they would rather feel the process is being fair because we are talking to each other. And the police on the other side will also be able to explain to NUP what they mean by security breach. Because the young people may be doing these things without necessarily knowing they are breaching security.
This is a white shirt.
Yeah.
If this shirt was red, would it be a security breach? If I had a white cap, if it's red in that regard, would it be a security breach? And how so? Do you think, like other experts are saying, that this was a ruse to just look for what NUP has in its information database, what they are planning for this election?
Now, Romeo, a very good question coming in there. And like I said, already the public has opinion. And these are the opinions that are coming through the public. But I will take you back to the process of 2016 yes. and 2015.
Yeah.
There was what we called P10. That time, P10 had been instituted by the Forum for Democratic Change. And the police was interested in knowing how is P10 turning out? What exactly are they doing? And so also, NUP has a young group of people who have been branded as militias. And I think that the police has been wanting to know a lot more of what is happening inside there, that they moved in there. And NUP knows that it is more than just what was taken. And also the police knows there are issues that they were looking for. And that is why I'm saying the public might not know the whole detail. But right now we have positioned ourselves, those who are on the side of the police and those who are on the side of NUP. The more important thing to happen at this stage is let us get dialogue happening on both ends, on the side of police and on this side, to understand that you might think your red shirt is not military regalia, but I, as the police, might define it as military regalia. And I am threatened by it, or I am thinking it's going to cause insecurity within the electoral spectrum. So it is important for these two people to identify what are the issues and talk about these issues such that an amicable situation is created for the election. Because it won't help us if the tension continues. There will always be suspicion on one side and the election will turn out violent, which is what we want to guard against.
Well, of course, Charity, in the past, such ransacking tendencies were actually being meted out on the FDC party because they were being deemed as a threat to the NRM party. But as it is, Kizza Besigye is no longer in the race. Maybe they are looking at FDC as maybe a redundant party as it is. not as big as a threat as NUP. Do you believe that to be true, that NUP has taken over the space of FDC in this political spectrum?
Yeah, there's a lot of research to substantiate that point that you raised right now. If you look at Research World International, they did research and showed that all urban centers had been now occupied by NUP, and previously those were the strongholds of FDC. But when we look at the nominations of yesterday and what was happening countrywide and what we, the observers, have seen during the special interest group elections, it's not necessarily true. It is that the first and the biggest political party that still has strong grounding on ground is NRM. And then there is FDC that follows closely. And they try to field a lot of candidates, if you would also see. NUP comes third. The only difference with NUP right now is that it has young people. And you know, young people, young blood flowing in them, they will do anything, they will try anything. Right. They are strong and they have opinion and they will stand for that opinion and nothing can stop them from that. So that and the demographics for the 2021 election is that 70% are young people. So the struggle for the young person in this election is a real thing to look at. And you realize that NUP, right from the top to the bottom, it is young faces that are there. NRM, you have a mixture of all, but you have the old guns sticking on a lot more. Yeah. So if you compare the two and the demographics of the country, then you realize the political party that would have a lot of fanfare this time round would be NUP. If I had been FDC, to ground myself a bit better, I would have also pulled in a lot of young people because I have been in the trenches for 20 years and I would like to galvanize my space and people seem to know I have been around. That is what I would have done.
Of course, Uganda has the second youngest population in the whole world. And yes, of course, we are talking about 75% of young people making up a majority of the people in this country. But then 70% of those young people are joining NUP. Most of the young people are unemployed, and those who are in some kind of businesses are getting meager pay, meaning they might not have enough money to campaign or to campaign against their opponents from the NRM, who have a lot of money. And during the raid of the NUP offices, they also mentioned that 23 million was lost. And I was also talking to the Secretary General, Mr. Rongoya. He was telling me 100 of their candidates might not be nominated because they do not have the 3 million shillings that is needed. Let's talk about the financial implications of this election. You have over-commercialization of politics on the NRM side. They have too much money to spend on this election. Now you have young people from NUP who do not have a single point, but they seem to have the ideas. What are the implications of all this? Might these young people be sidelined on the national stage? Because you have a voter who is saying, give me something for something. They do not want to hear your words. What are the implications?
Yes, the financial implications are real, like you raised them. A number of young people in NUP have actually already fallen off. We've seen a lot of them from upcountry falling off and they cannot afford to pay that nomination fee. So it is unfortunate that our elections have become very expensive and they are about money, and that Ugandans do not find bribe as an issue. They think it is a daily thing they can demand for this money. It is unfortunate. You actually would be seeing soldiers marching by the street right now. The whole idea is Ugandans should begin to appreciate that bribery in Article 70 is illegal, and that corruption in our processes starts with us ourselves. We should not demand for money from the candidates, but look at the ideas that they are presenting. So the problem in that instance is with the voter. But the financial muscle, how come NRM seems to have access to state resources? That's the way it has been from 1996. We saw it in 2001. It was not about to change in 2021. So what needed to have happened within political parties? The political parties needed to have planned right from the time they knew they were going to participate in this process, which is about 3 years ago. And then they needed to have made their point clear, Romeo, because the political parties meet in the National Consultative Forum. They have meetings in IPOD, and whenever they're meeting there, they talk about issues that concern the political party and the activities within political parties. Financing should have been made a big issue because they knew that it is still going to be an issue as they had seen it from the previous electoral trends. But they didn't make it an issue until when it came to the time of facing the reality that the money is not there. So going forward, they should start at lower positions, galvanize their financial muscle, as councillors, like your friend did, the one of the man from Chevando, what is his name, Segrinya.
Yeah.
Start from lower positions, galvanize your resources, then go to become an MP. So first look for the money, galvanize it at a lower level as a local councillor, save for it, and go and stand.
Charity Ahimbisimbwe, let's shed more light on the issue of age limit. Do you believe age limit was removed in good faith to allow more young people to participate in the political space within Uganda? Remember, age limit is removed, an 18-year-old is allowed to participate, but then where will that 18-year-old get 3 million to be nominated as an MP? Where will that 18-year-old get 20 million to be nominated as a president? Do you think it was done in good faith to actually allow young people to join this race or otherwise?
Age limits is totally different from allowing young people to participate in this process or otherwise. Age limits had been the last safety net, because we must contextualize. It had been the last safety net that was in the Constitution to allow for peaceful transition of power. And it was removed after the term limits had been removed.
Yeah.
So the motive for removing the age limit was to allow for the incumbent to come back as a contender in this election. I don't want to believe it was that in terms of the context.
Because that was the argument
the
late Abiriga and the Minister of Local Government.
The context at the time was that we had term limits in the Constitution. Term limits were off. The only last safety net that we had to discuss the question of transition, because whether we want it or not, a day is coming in this country when we will have to consider the question of transition. But how do we consider that question? That is why the Constitution had given us these options. When you talk about rule of law, you stick to what the Constitution is saying. So that whole age limit campaign was a bit a different thing. They lifted the one in local governments to allow for more people to participate, which is okay. Because if I am 18, why shouldn't I participate in the governance of my country? Article 1, Clause 4. But I am also happy that now they are going to reinstate the term limits. At least we'll have one safety net coming back into the Constitution. Yes. They have been clear with it. The CJ has been clear with it. Parliament is willing. Now the process that is going to move beyond 2021 will be to reinstate term limits, not age limit, but term limits, which I think could happen.
And Charity, would you advocate, as a measure or recommendation, do you advocate for the removal of nomination fee for the MPs and the presidents, at least, to allow more young people to join this political process?
Romeo, no, I would not recommend total removal.
Yeah.
I would recommend reconsideration of the money. Because if it is 3 million for a young person, it's a bit difficult. Give them 1.5. Give them 1 million.
Or 200,000.
Or 500,000.
Yes.
Because you see, you also want a certain breed of people going to parliament. If you make it so easy, then anybody will wake up and go there. How do they relate to policy? How do they think about these issues? How do they debate them on the floor of parliament?
But as it is, if you keep the money up there, we then leave politics for the rich people.
Yes, there's also that. So we must strike a balance, Romeo. And I think the balance for me would come from the academic qualifications, that we raise the threshold for those who are going to parliament to a degree level. And then the money comes down a bit to 2 million. And that's okay, it squares out, because not everybody has that degree. We left it at S6 because the members of parliament insisted, even in this term, when we kept pushing for that reform to happen, that it would close out a number of people from participating in the process. And looking at the demographics, which are 70%, 75 young people, you understood that their argument had strength. So it remained the way it